Hey, what's up, everybody? Paul from Forreal, and we are here today with Dr. Spencer Greene, board-certified medical toxicologist, emergency physician, and founder of Bayou City Medical Toxicology and Emergency Medicine Consultants. They work with helping physicians and other healthcare professionals provide better care with patients with man, that's a big word. Toxicological emergencies, including envenomations, overdoses, and occupational exposures. So, Dr. Greene, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. I know you're extremely busy. So
thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be fun. So Dr. Greene also serves as the director of toxicology. He's one of the attending emergency physicians at HCA Houston Healthcare Kingwood. He's a clinical professor at the University of Houston College of Medicine, and he is also faculty appointments at the University of Texas. What is that?
Physics School of Nursing.
Physics School of Nursing.
Yeah.
And the Department of Emergency Medicine and at the Wright State University, Boonshoft Medical School and Medicine. Yeah, that's a lot to say. So
yes,
you also started the Houston Venom Conferences, correct?
That's right. I'm actually wearing the shirt.
Awesome.
Back in 2013.
Yeah, that's awesome. And last year, obviously, because of COVID, there wasn't one.
Right.
And now I saw some information you just posted. There's one coming up in 2022.
Yeah, we just confirmed the details. June 3rd and 4th, we're going to have our 2022 Houston Venom Conference. We're going to have a reception at the Houston Zoo the night before on the 3rd. And then we have lectures all day on the 4th. We've got speakers from around the country talking mostly about snake bites, but also some spider envenomations and a few other things, as well as some non-clinical lectures. And I'm hoping to offer some veterinary credit as well.
That's cool. That's very cool. That's something I'm definitely going to put on the calendar. I would love to come out and attend. So now, what exactly, so we were just briefly touching on the Facebook group. What exactly do you do in your day-to-day as far as consulting and helping people with envenomations?
Okay. All right. Now, Paul, I should point out, you keep coming in and out like there's a pause sometimes like 5, 6, 7
times. I don't know what's going on. There's nobody home right now, at least not on the internet. So sometimes this internet here is kind of wonky. Let me see.
Yeah, I wonder if I need to switch rooms. Would that screw up the recording too much?
No. If you need to jump out and jump back in, go ahead.
Yeah, you know, I'm gonna bring my camera upstairs.
Okay.
Like when I switch rooms, I mean like literally switch rooms in my house.
Oh, nice.
So because yeah, the internet is just a little unreliable in my office.
Yeah, so we have, sometimes there's a little bit of a hiccup here too. It just depends. That's more or less based on who's online here in the house, which is generally all the time everybody. But my younger son and my older son, my younger son's in New York and my older son is here. So
how many do you have in the house overall?
1, 2, 3, 4. There's 3 kids and then my wife and myself. So there's 5 of us. So when you get everybody kicking on the internet all at the same time, you cell phones and video games, and my sons, both of the boys have either a laptop with a stream going on and they're playing a video game. My daughter's streaming, and then my other son's the same. It's like, how do you guys watch it do so much? It's insane. So I can't focus on one thing half the time.
This should work better.
Yeah.
All right, so I can start over with the question you asked me about.
So on your day-to-day.
Like, what do I do day-to-day?
Yeah.
Oh. All right, so as a medical toxicologist, as the only medical toxicologist for my region, I'm on call 24/7, 365 for my hospital. Now, the good thing is a lot of the tox things are really insignificant. They're easily managed. Many of them don't require hospital admission or even treatment. So I get called about them, and I may just give some advice over the phone. For the sickest patients, I try to come in right away and see them. Mm-hmm. And of course, for all the envenomations, I try to come and see them because I love them, and that's what I take most seriously. Is what I've devoted my career to. It's totally unpredictable. There are days I may get 3 or 4 or 5 snake bites. There are weeks I may get 15, 20 bites. There are weeks I may not get any bites. Same thing with overdoses. I may get 3, 4, 5 patients in a day. My record's 21. Yeah, that's what happens when you have a mass casualty incident.
Yes.
On the other hand, I may go several days without any phone calls. So that's what I do from a clinical standpoint for toxicology.
Mm-hmm.
Additionally, like most toxicologists in the United States, I'm also an emergency physician. As such, I do a certain number of shifts in our various emergency departments. I'm down to about 8 shifts a month, divided over 3 locations. So between the two, the emergency medicine and medical toxicology, I spend most days in the hospital at some point. At some point, I'm in the hospital. My goal is to not go back and forth to the hospital all day, especially because I don't live as close as I used to my job.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on top of all that, as an academician, I do research, I do scholarly activity, I write book chapters and articles, I lecture a ton, and on top of all that, I have a rotation for the toxicology rotation for the emergency medicine residents. So for 11 of 26 blocks we have, or 26 half blocks we have over the academic year, I have someone with me. So I give a few lectures per day, trying to train them in how to manage toxicological patients when they're working in the emergency departments.
Okay.
And finally, beyond all that, as you pointed out, I'm one of the physician experts for National Snakebite Support. And we are constantly being asked questions about bites, both active envenomations when someone's in the hospital, and then how to prepare for a bite or how to recover from a bite. So with my limited free time, I'm answering questions about snakebite management. All in all, it's a pretty busy life, but it's a fun one. And that's Desi, who just walked by.
Nice.
Any cats who lives in this house.
Nice. So in other words, you don't sleep, or you sleep upside down, and you're constantly being called.
I do sleep every day. Sometimes not a lot. But I am always on call, and I'm constantly being interrupted. That is true. Yeah. It's better now than a few years ago when I had to cover 4 hospitals that were nowhere near each other. At least now I go to one hospital. That's good. And the adult side and the pediatric side are not too far from each other, as opposed to, different buildings, different cities.
Yeah. Now, do you find that you're getting more, are you, as a tox, I'm going to call you a toxdoc because I like that. I like the way that sounds.
Okay.
I hope you don't mind. Are you guys getting more and more traction? Oh, sorry. Is that better?
Well, I hear you fine now. I just didn't hear probably the important part of what you said.
So as a doctor dealing with all this stuff, are you guys gaining more ground on some of the outlying hospitals and other doctors, ER doctors, calling you for help or looking for some sort of help?
Absolutely. When I moved to Texas in 2012, there were a lot of places managing bites really poorly. Mm-hmm. There's still a fair amount of less than ideal management, but it's getting better. It's less bad than it used to be. People are learning. The Venom Conference started out with about 60 attendees. I just said, hey, why don't you come here, learn about bites? And it was mostly pre-hospital providers with some nurses and some physicians, but it's grown over the years. I'm expecting over 400 attendees at this next event. I've lectured at multiple hospitals. People have joined the National Snakebite Support Group, and now we have over 100,000 members. Yeah, people are learning. I've got hospitals in systems that have never employed me, having them call me when they have questions or concerns. They don't call all the time. I kind of wish they would, just to ensure that they're getting the best care, but they're calling me now and they're changing things. Plus, since I moved here, we've had a few developments in the management of snake bites. There's a new antivenom on the market that was not available when I moved here. When I moved here, we had no good evidence. Those of us who treated bites knew that Crofab was beneficial for copperheads, but now we have good evidence. We did the randomized clinical trial at 2 of my hospitals back 6 years ago. So a lot of things have changed. So yeah, people are getting better. Some states are, ahead of the curve than others. Mm-hmm. We still have some ways to go, but we're getting better. So yeah, people reach out to us and people are doing better things. And thanks to Snakebite Support and the education I've done for the public, people are advocating for themselves and for their loved ones. So when they see that things are not being managed perfectly, they speak up and they show people the literature. I've had some great successes where the hospital didn't want to do the right thing, and the patient's family members say, hey, look at the guidelines, look at the national guidelines. Why aren't you doing this? Why can't you do this? And things get done. So that's very gratifying.
Yeah, that's it. And that's, You know, one of the things that I've focused a lot of my time on in the last few years, as I interned with Cody and Pia, is that we've looked at the private handling and private keeping aspect. But I think something that really we've missed out on as far as education is what we have here, what's in our environment every day. And now that I've seen the Facebook group and how many people are taking bites and where and how they're happening, it's astounding to see. And it's great information. The information is fantastic. It gives you an idea of, you know, hey, my wife's going out to do gardening. Do me a favor, grab the rake and kind of poke around underneath stuff before you go stick your hands in there.
Yep.
You know, so, you know, we always focus so much on what we see. And I was just talking to somebody at work a couple days ago, and she was telling me how her grandson is this huge fan of Coyote Peterson, and he reenacts all of his videos and does this. And I thought, oh God, okay, this is not good. You know, let's take a step back. And, you know, she said, here's his YouTube channel, go check it out. And the video I watched, he's adorable. He's licking a frog. And I'm like, God, kissing a big turtle on the face. I'm like, these are all bad things. And I asked her, I said, have you guys ever talked to him about snakes? And she's like, oh, he loves snakes. And I was like, no, stop. Have you ever talked to him about, you know, copperheads, water moccasins, rattlesnakes? She's like, those are in like Central Florida. I'm like, yeah, they're here. So what do you think as far as what we're doing with education now? And I mean more like the Cody's and some of these other facilities. Do you think the word is getting out there properly to do you see more young kids getting bitten by accident, or do you see a lot of just careless, like, oh, I just didn't know what that was and I just grabbed it, you know, as opposed to I was thumbing around in the garden?
So we see different populations. If you look at all comers across the United States, contrary to popular belief, most bites are the result of just not seeing the snake, not being aware of the snake. You know, we did a study using data from the North American Snakebite Registry, which, although smaller than some other data sets, I trust more than the other because it's data collected at the bedside by people who specialize in treating snake bites. It's what we do. So I trust the example, I trust the histories more than I trust many other databases. We found that 81% of the bites were the result of unintentional interaction. People didn't know a snake was there. They stepped on or near a snake, or they put their hand somewhere they shouldn't have. So nationwide, those are the figures, but there are definitely populations where that's not true. It's true that with coral snakes, most people are intentionally interacting. Yeah. It's really hard to get bitten by one. They're lazy, they're slow, but people get bit when they mess with them. Yeah. Sometimes it's well-intentioned messing. Like I've had a lot of kids get bitten when they were trying to save the coral snake from the road or whatever. Yeah. But most people get bit by coral snakes, it's usually intentional interaction. And of course, you're talking about young people. There's two types of young people. The kids, and in that, you know, in their story, you know, it's the same as the national. Most are unintentional. But then there's the young guys, you know, the kids, if you will, in the
herp world,
herpetology community who mess with snakes. And yeah, they get bitten because they're being reckless. And there are more stories coming out. You know, North Carolina, you can think of several stories over the last few months of people being a little irresponsible, getting bitten and such. I get a call about a lot of bites from non-native species around the country because I see a lot of that here in Texas. People have a lot of non-native snakes. Mm-hmm. So I get called from Pennsylvania. I get called from North Carolina. I get called from California about non-native snakes. And we see a lot of people who are just relatively new to the hobby who are just, you know, they think they're invincible and they're doing things that are kind of reckless. So I know that people know about us, but
I spent a lot of time with Cody and Pia, and that's where we met, was at Cody's. And I can say that I feel honored to have been accepted to do that because it was a lot of time out of his daily schedule, which is crazy. But I feel like at the end of the day, the careless handling is the people that haven't taken the time and they just think, oh, I've had a boa or a corn snake, I can handle this, it's not a big deal. And I think what people are missing is exactly what's involved. We've worked really hard on protocols here for our house. I'm just waiting on my permit to come in. So one of the things that we've all done as a group is, you know, kind of adapt the same thing so that this way, if we have a bite or something bad should happen, where all of us, our whole group is doing the same exact thing. So we can kind of talk through it and see what happened and how we got there. So, you know, part of our thing here is, you know, what do we do? What are the do's and don'ts of, you know, I'm here at home. I take a bite. What do I do? You know, aside from staying calm and locking the animal up, what are my steps after that are going to be important?
All right. So yeah, obviously you want to ensure everybody's safety, your safety, safety of any potential rescuers, and safety of the snake. Sorry, I've got a
don't even worry about it.
So let's talk about native snakes first.
Yeah. Yep.
Because that's what most, you know, listeners or viewers are going to be dealing with. Mm-hmm. Native snakes, the likelihood of death is really low. We authored it, you know, we published a study last year showing that there were an average of 3.4 fatalities per year in the United States. And a lot of times it was patients who didn't seek medical attention, especially people who handle snakes in religious services. If you take away all the people who didn't seek medical attention, it's probably, you know, below 2 fatalities per year.
Okay.
So realize you have a good chance of surviving as long as you seek medical attention and don't do anything dumb. You want to get to medical care as soon as possible, safely. I never recommend that anyone drive himself or herself. The first thing you want to do is you want to call. You want to call someone, either 911 or a friend. And whom you call kind of depends on 2 things. 1, how close you are to a hospital, and 2, how symptomatic you are. If you have a bite, say to the finger, and you have some swelling, but you have no other symptoms, you're like, okay, that really hurts. And if you're close to a hospital, call a friend, he or she can get there. Now, if 911 can get you to the hospital faster, call them, because not only will they get you there faster, they can provide medical care and sometimes life-saving care if necessary. Mm-hmm. So if it's something stable, you want to get to the hospital as quickly as possible, whichever way that is, again, not driving yourself. Yes. If you're having anything serious, you want to get medical attention to you as quickly as possible. Don't call a friend to drive you, call 911. Call a friend so he or she can come over and help, but call 911 because they can bring the life-saving medical equipment and medical knowledge to you.
Yeah.
Other than that, most of the things that have been recommended in the past have proven to be useless at best, dangerous at worst. People still do tourniquets. In this day and age, all the information out there, you would know better. Tourniquets are great for life-saving, are life-saving for life-threatening bleeding. Tourniquets are great for life-threatening bleeding, and that's it. Cutting off the arterial blood supply to an affected limb is essentially, you know, condemning you to losing that limb. It won't help because you're not going to get major systemic, you know, symptoms anyway, most likely. Yeah. But you want to get tissue damage. It's absolutely going to exacerbate the local damage. For that reason, we don't do anything tight. You know, pressure immobilization, a lymphatic constriction bandage. We don't do those for snakes whose envenomations are characterized primarily by tissue damage.
Okay.
We don't do venom extractors. It really is kind of despicable. They still sell these things. They don't remove venom. They actually cause damage. And a bunch of us were involved with a public awareness campaign. You can actually find the report online. It's called, you know, More Harm, No Good. And just this past week, we had someone who applied one of those extractors.
I saw it.
And he made it worse.
Yep.
He made it worse. What else? We don't do electrical therapy. I actually had a fight with someone in one of the snakebite groups who called me all sorts of names and said that because he keeps copperheads and cottonmouths, he knows more about science than I do, and he was recommending electrical therapy, you know, like stun guns to, you know, treat any envenomation. Multiple studies have shown they don't help. What they do is cause local injury, they cause local burns, and occasionally electrocute someone. You know, I've always joked, it's kind of cool in a Tarantino sort of way to hook your friend up to a car battery, but it won't help the envenomation. You know, if it's going to denature the venom, it's also going to denature, you know, the host, the victim. So
I'm not going to let my wife watch this because she will 100% want to shock me.
Yes. Yeah, and there's counselors for that sort of thing. You can look at that later.
Yeah.
What else?
For sure.
I would say arguably the most, and of course we don't cut and suck. If you look at the back of the shirt, it says "Real Snakebite Experts don't cut and suck."
Yeah, I remember. I see that. Yeah, that's awesome.
I have to tell people that, but they still do it occasionally.
Yep.
Probably the most, I wouldn't say controversial, but the one where I'm on the fence. My friends who've been envenomated, and for better or for worse, I have a lot of friends who've been envenomated, they tell me that ice packs make them feel better. The problem is prolonged ice or any sort of cryotherapy can actually really damage the tissue. I think it's reasonable to do a cold pack or an ice pack for like 5 minutes at a time. 5 minutes on, 10 minutes off. We always say no ice because we don't trust people to do the right thing, but a little bit of ice, probably fine. 5 minutes on, 10 minutes off. What you absolutely don't want to do, and there was a big lawsuit in Texas related to a physician who did this among other terrible things. He actually packed the extremity in ice. That's, this isn't fish in Seattle. You don't want to do that. This is, a viable tissue that you're going to make inviable. Few minutes of ice is fine, wrapped in a towel, but not prolonged cryotherapy. That will cause tissue injury.
Okay.
Yeah, most of these things that were done in the past, they're not helpful. They're harmful. Get to the hospital. The other things you can do: remove any constrictive clothing or jewelry. Hands can swell, feet can swell. So if you have rings, watches, etc., take them off. And then positioning. For years, people thought incorrectly that you want to keep the affected limb below heart level to reduce the systemic absorption of the venom. And unfortunately, there's still some reputable places that recommend this, but we know now it is incorrect. The amount of venom, the volume is so little that you're really not going to make a difference in the systemic absorption by keeping the affected extremity below heart level. But what we know is that in over 95% of choroid envenomations, we get tissue swelling, we get tissue injury, and elevation makes that better and reduces tissue damage. We've known this for years. It's one of the things recommended in the Unified Treatment Algorithm, which came out 10 years ago. And as of last September, we have data showing that people who elevate the affected extremity get better faster. This was an abstract at the North American Congress of Clinical Toxicology. We have data showing that elevation is better. So the first thing I recommend people doing, besides calling 911 or calling a friend or whatever, elevate the affected extremity. They get better faster, and you can see it. You can see these people. I always elevate the hand or foot as soon as they arrive in the hospital if they haven't already elevated, and you can see them getting better even before the antivenom's up and running.
Okay.
So. And then the final thing, you asked what to do. The final thing is go to the right place. I was thinking about this earlier today, not even thinking about our Zoom call. So many hospitals say that they can treat a bite because they carry the antivenom. You know what? It's so much more than having the antivenom. You have to know when to use it, when not to use it, how to use it, what else to do. There's a lot of little things that if you don't have expertise in snake bites, you forget to do, whether it's the correct positioning or the correct lab tests or not doing prophylactic antibiotics. There's lots of little things that add up. So you want to go to a place where you have a snake bite expert. A lot of hospitals say they can take care of bites. A lot of hospitals are wrong. It's as simple as that. There are not many hospitals that have expertise in managing bites. And this is no different from, I say, a heart attack or stroke. You want to go to a place where they have documented expertise. You want to go to a place where they have an expert that you can trust.
Mm-hmm. Well, the good thing here in Florida is we have Dr. Ben. So, I mean, he's fantastic wealth of information and knowledge. So, and he's Dr. Worldwide. So, but it seems to me that that's probably one of the most important things is obviously there's panic. The first thing you're thinking is, wow, what just happened? And I like to think that in all the work that I've done with Cody, that I'll be calm if it ever happened. But I know in my mind that it's going to be pretty chaotic. So, one thing that we've decided here was I'll never work with anything if nobody's home. So either I have a 16-year-old son, my oldest son, whoever, somebody has to be here in order for me to be doing anything in the room. So I'm working on IND paperwork, trying to get all this stuff together. A lot of people say, "Oh, that's too much. It's a big hassle." You know what? It is a big hassle. I work in nutraceutical field, right just below pharmaceutical, and working with the FDA can be a big pain in the butt. But at the end of the day, is that however many hours it takes to do all the paperwork and get all that stuff done, is it worthwhile if it could save your life? And I have to believe that it is. So now, do you guys see a lot of self-treatment, people trying to just do things on their own because they're embarrassed to go to the hospital?
No, not a lot. I've treated about 42 bites this year, I think 41 bites this year. I can only think of like 3 or 4 people who attempted anything. There's one guy who was like 1,007 years old. I could be exaggerating.
Yeah.
No, but he was like in his 60s. He actually cut and suck. And I was like, oh. But this guy was in his like late 70s, and probably has a little bit of dementia too. So he did that. Someone else tried to apply a tourniquet, but he did it wrong. So he basically tied a shoelace around his, leg.
Fantastic.
So, and then a few people did ice. I haven't seen anything really egregious besides that one cut and suck guy. Yeah, most people don't do anything really stupid. They just don't do all the things they should do, like proper elevation. And unfortunately, even when they call 911, a lot of times EMS doesn't do the proper elevation. And sometimes they know to, but logistically it's just difficult because the stretcher itself.
Yeah. So I know somebody in New York that was bitten by a gaboon viper years ago, and he did the cut and suck thing and then told us afterwards that it was a big mistake. So yeah, he ended up, I think he lost part of his hand or something.
It is definitely.
So now what do you think about as far as not the native species, but non-native species? Obviously people are keeping things that are crazy. You made mention of North Carolina and this young man who was bitten by an Western green mamba back at the end of March, beginning of April. And then obviously the cobra was loose from November up until just recently. Man, that's so hard to even say.
Yep.
So what do you recommend as far as the exotic treatment?
So really, this is where expertise matters, because the treatment for one type of non-native snake may be completely different from the other. If you have an exclusively neurotoxic cobra or any exclusively neurotoxic snake, we are going to do things that we specifically would avoid for snakes that can cause tissue injury. If you have exclusively neurotoxicity, correct application of pressure mobilization may be life-saving. It may be terrific. The problem is if you do it for a non-native that causes tissue injury, you're going to make the tissue injury worse. And it's also important to note that there was a study by Bob Norris showing that most people don't do pressure mobilization correctly. And if you do it incorrectly, not only could you damage tissue if that's a component of the venom, you may also enhance the systemic absorption. So you have to know for which species pressure mobilization would be correct. There's also some other medications beyond antivenom that may be helpful in certain envenomations. For example, with some neurotoxic snakes, we can use these drugs called cholinesterase inhibitors that may decrease the likelihood of paralysis. At the same time, there are some, like the mamba, for example, that in addition to causing respiratory paralysis, they can cause what we call muscarinic symptoms, in which case you don't want to use these cholinesterase inhibitors because those will exacerbate the muscarinic symptoms. So you may have to actually counteract that. So really, the treatment depends on what the non-native species is. And that's why it's so important to have protocols, to have pre-hospital protocols, have in-hospital protocols, and then talk to the people who are likely to be treating you. If you were to go to a random community hospital in the middle of anywhere, I don't want to name any particular state or whatever, and you had, say, a forest cobra bite, are they going to know if that's what we call a group 1 cobra or a group 2 cobra? I guarantee they won't. What's the likelihood that someone's going to have expertise in non-native snakes? It's hard to believe that there are people who don't live for snake bites like some of us do. There are people who have other things in their lives. I'm not friends with those people, but so they're not going to know, hey, is this exclusively neurotoxic or do I have to worry about tissue injury? We saw what happened a few years ago in Michigan when they mismanaged a monocle cobra bite, and there was a serious tissue injury and tissue loss. Mm-hmm. So you really have to plan ahead with your EMS providers and your hospital. And that's what a lot of keepers of non-native snakes fail to understand. They may have they may have done everything appropriate for themselves at home. They have a good security system. They have backup plans. If you don't talk to your hospital, and you may even have your antivenom. If you go there, they may not give it to you if they don't know you.
Yeah.
If they don't know the correct treatments, they may say, "Oh, what is this?" I have so many friends to Texas outside of Houston where they get bit by non-native snakes, and they actually provide the right antivenom. And hospitals, well, here at this hospital, we use Crofab. You know what? Crofab is great for North American pit vipers. It's what I use for North American pit viper envenomations. But I don't use it for a white-lipped green tree pit viper bite. You don't use it for a Brazilian lancehead. You don't use it for coral snakes. You don't use it for gaboon vipers. We have appropriate antivenoms for those. Ideally, the people who have them themselves, or at least they've made an arrangement or will make an arrangement to get the right stuff. You don't just use any antivenom. You know, there's 167 antivenoms in the world or so, and about 130 something of them are for snakes. It's not one antivenom for all snakes. You have to use the.
Of course. Yeah. And listen, I just want to just touch base here for everybody that's watching. We are kind of cutting in and out. And again, I apologize. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it is what it is. It's not terrible.
Silver flares.
Yeah, we'll go with that. So as a keeper, your suggestion would be, I want to say now it's probably 10 minutes from a brand new emergency room that's just down the road. It would be beneficial for me to go into, who would I want to talk to? Would I want to talk to the ER, the management of the ER, or?
Yeah, so ideally you talk to the director of the emergency departments, you know,
Okay.
the physician director, and then he or she can get you in touch with, you know, either they can handle it themselves or they can get you in touch with someone. Maybe they have someone, you know, maybe they have a toxicologist on staff. Maybe they have, you know, an EMS, you know, physician, or someone who would take the lead on that sort of thing. Maybe they have some young, you know, junior faculty member who wants to make a name for himself or herself.
Okay.
So, but yeah, you should talk to the director, and then that way, heaven forbid you get tagged, they have a plan for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in Houston, a lot of people know, just come to me and I know what I'm going to do. I know what to do. I have access to a lot of the non-native antivenoms. I know when to use them. I know how to use them.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have a relationship with that, you can get really screwed and you might not get treated.
And I've heard other people say that they brought antivenom in and the hospital refused to use it. And then at the very last minute, after talking to probably one of you guys in this elite group, I'll call it, toxicologist, they ended up using the antivenom, and that person lived and had very little damage because somebody finally made the right call and did it right. But you're definitely right. I have, you know, that binder that's right up here. I hate doing this on the camera. There, those are all my protocols. The protocols for the snakes that I have on hand will be in a separate binder. You know, we've got, I always complain at work because we have, everything is in a batch record. So somebody checks it, then somebody else checks it, then somebody else checks it, then somebody verifies that everybody verified. And I'm like, why is this? And I got to thinking about it the other day when I was setting tanks and stuff up. And I thought, man, what if my phone had actually rang and I answered the call and I walked out of the room and I stopped and I turned around and I said, what if I got a call and I forgot to close the door? And I walked out of the room and left the door open. And let's just say a gaboon viper or something got out, and my wife or somebody walked into the room looking for me, and it was by the door and they got bitten. You know, so we've put a protocol in place. I made a form where, you know, obviously 2 people, there'll never be 1 person here. That's the rule. The second person's responsibility will be to come in the room when I'm done and go through and verify that each cage has a lock on it and everything's locked.
Totally cut out.
Did I? I keep seeing it. You got me now?
I heard a lot of what you said, but yeah, I can hear you now. But okay. Yeah, you froze up for a while.
Yeah. So we have the protocols in place.
Is this an audio thing or a video thing when you actually?
I put it up as a video, but I mean, it's the audio will be okay. I have an actual audio recording that goes with it, so I'll sample the audio and see if it's better, and then try to mix it in. But so I guess the most important thing for everybody to take away from this is there's rights and wrongs, and there's enough information out there now that if you're out messing around in your yard, take precautions. You know, don't just think they're just not there. So that was one of the reasons that I really looked forward to having you on, was to talk about, you know, what people do and what they should do in case of a bite. And, you know, I think there's a lot of great information out there, and the Facebook group I think is amazing. We'll go ahead and we'll link all that stuff in the description of the video, and we'll get your website linked up on there as well. Now, what do you see as far as the antivenom portion, this new antivenom that's come out? This is a hard question to ask because I think it might be different everywhere. As far as what is the cost, the average cost of a bite?
Man, that is really hard to answer because there are so many things that go into your total bill. So let's talk with some of the easiest things. actually, there is no easy. So the wholesale price of Antivenom could be anywhere from $1,400 to $3,200 per vial, depending on what you're talking about. But some envenomations will require 6 vials of the 3,200. Some will require 24 of the 1,400. On top of that, hospitals are going to charge 5 or 10 times as much. At the same time, they'll look to see if you're insured versus self-pay, and then they'll give you a discount if you're self-pay. Then, how long are you in the hospital? To what unit are you admitted? A lot of snake bites and a lot of hospitals, they go right to the ICU because that's what they do. They assume they need ICU. But you know what? A lot of bites can be safely managed in observation units or on the floor. I've literally admitted one adult to the ICU since moving to Texas 9 years ago. I've treated like 500 bites. I've admitted one adult to the ICU, and that's because he was on the ventilator following monocled cobra bites. Everybody else I've managed in the obs units or on a regular floor or have discharged or managed in the ED and sent home. Mm-hmm. I've admitted one to the ICU. I think that's a big source of expense. Some people order lab tests that are unnecessary. Some people order antibiotics, which again, we know should not be done prophylactically. Some people order a lot of imaging that I just don't do. When people get a bill, especially if they have insurance, it may be really overwhelming, but they're not going to have to pay that. Maybe $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. You've seen things circulating on the internet for $250,000, but a lot of people don't have to pay anything more than a deductible. So it really depends. The pharmacoeconomics of a bite are challenging, and it's more than just the antivenoms. The whole hospital say, and whether you're consulted by other people, that bill you. There are places where they'll admit a snake bite and then they'll call infectious diseases and surgery, even though we know that ID and surgery really shouldn't be involved with snake bites generally. And those are just additional expenses. So it's hard to, but I will say it's not cheap. An ounce of prevention is worth $200,000 of control.
I've always heard people say
cure. Sorry.
I've always heard people say it's the cost of a high-end sports car to a high-end mansion and everything in between. So I guess the reason for that question is more for the new people that are looking to get into this hobby. Understand that if you're a private keeper, you run the risk of putting your family in a very, very precarious position, especially if you're the breadwinner and you end up in the hospital. Like some people, I've heard stories of 2 months, the Tyler Nolan King Cobra bite, he was in the hospital for a couple months. Yeah. Those are expenses that families are going to have to incur. And you're on top of that, is your employer going to be courteous enough to say, hey, we'll just hold your job for 2 months? Probably not. This day and age, it's a real scary undertaking. So,
and you bring up a really good point. People always talk about the price of getting treated for a native snake bite because our native antivenoms are more expensive than most of the non-native antivenoms because they're not approved and they're not made with the same standards. Because a lot of non-native antivenoms kind of cheap. $40-$50 a vial as opposed to thousands of dollars per vial. But people balk at the price of getting treated. What they fail to consider is the price of going untreated. Yeah, there are people who go untreated and have weeks, months, sometimes permanent disability. Well, that interferes with your ability to earn a living as well. One of the great things about our randomized clinical trial showing, that CroFab was beneficial for cobras, people generally got better in a really short amount of time, and they were able to do the things they need to do, the things they want to do. People who go untreated, they may not be able to do their job for weeks or months.
Yeah.
You get treated, you may be back to normal in a really short amount of time, and that's why we treat. We don't treat primarily to keep people from dying because we know that death is fortunately so uncommon. We treat people so they get better faster, so they recover faster and more fully. That's why we treat. And it kills me when so many hospitals just don't offer antivenom. It's like, it's not coming out of your pocket, and it's not like it's really unsafe. CroFab especially has a great safety profile.
Yeah.
We have tons of studies, tons of, patients showing that the incidence of adverse reactions is really low. And then these hospitals want to offer it. It's like, why wouldn't you offer it? It's got a great safety profile. They get better faster. And it's not like it's costing you anything. Either the patient has to pay for it or insurance pays for it. Or or the hospital. Worst case scenario, the hospital pays for it. You know what? It's not coming out of your salary. Do the right thing for the patient, and we offer the antivenom. It boggles my mind when they don't do that.
Yeah, it's again, you know, we talk about the portions of the like you said, you're a fan of snake bites. You know, that's what you do. Other people aren't into things like that, and you know that's okay. But at the end of the day, if there wasn't people like you, then there would be a lot less good information out there. And as we sit and discuss these things, I think to, you know, I was a volunteer fireman in New York for over 10 years, and you know, a lot of private keepers. Thank God we never had to deal with anything, but there was always that thought in my mind: is anybody really going to know, as a first responder, what do you do? You know, and it's like, in an area up in New York where there's really not, in our area, there's no venomous snakes. Nobody really knows about that stuff. And a lot of people were pretty shocked to hear that people even kept that. So we need to just understand it as the keepers in this industry, you need to be above the line. If it's illegal, don't keep it, because at that point, you're never going to say anything to anybody until it's too late. Going without medical treatment is a horrible idea if you have a family.
Yeah. It's a terrible idea if you don't have a family.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just a horrible undertaking of, you know, I would have to assume, and I've never been bitten. I've only heard like Cody's story and a few other people that I know. Cody said it was horrible. So I have to believe if he says it's bad, it's bad, you know? So we need to be smart and do this all the right way. And again, you know, you guys that are out there, you know, putting this information out for us all, it's fantastic. And, you know, I know I am grateful. So back to, again, the local or native species that we have here. You're in Texas, I'm in Florida. What do you see species wise that seems to be the biggest offender of innocent bite? We'll just say just bites overall. You know? Yeah.
I mean, where I am, it's 70% copperheads. You know, the numbers, when we can confirm the identity, it's about 70% copperheads. It's about 20% water moccasins, about 5% coral snakes, about 5% rattlesnakes.
Okay.
Where I am in Southeast Texas. As you go farther south, closer to Surfside, we go to Galveston, we see more western diamondback rattlesnakes. As you go west, we start seeing, you know, western diamondbacks. When you go east and north, we have some timber rattlesnakes, but they don't account for the majority. Just their total numbers increase a little bit. And then, of course, as you get to West Texas, copperheads are gone, and it's all rattlesnakes.
Yeah.
But yeah, where I am, it's 70% copperheads.
It's funny because I watched the Facebook page, and it seems like that's pretty much, you see sporadically a moccasin here and there, but it's mostly all copperheads, no matter where it's from.
Yeah, I mean, they have a huge geographic variation, distribution rather. And a lot of the people who join National Snakebite Sport are in Texas, you know, word of mouth and everything. So, of course. But that said, I just got a notification while we were recording this that someone just got bitten by a timber rattlesnake. And we do have a lot of timbers for the same reason, big geographic distribution. You know, there aren't a lot of people in the west half of the country involved with our group for whatever reason. But you know, they have some neat snakes out there.
Yeah, of course. Oh, yeah.
It's mostly copperheads, what we're getting called about.
Yeah, that seems to be the biggest one. So, well, listen, Dr. Greene, I'm going to let you go. We're going to go ahead. I'll take a look at how everything turned out. I appreciate you coming on. We're definitely going to get the information out. I'll link the website. I'll link your website and everything in the description. Again, I appreciate you coming on. Amazing information. It's great to know that there are people out there like you that are interested in this stuff, because I know that a lot of people hear the word snake and they run the other direction like they're going to chase you.
Well, yeah, this is my pleasure. I just wish we didn't have all those connectivity issues. That was frustrating.
Yeah. Well, I know you'll be here in Florida sooner or later, I'm sure. So
absolutely.
We'll definitely have to get together and do something live.
I have two sisters who live in Florida. I'll be back.
Awesome. Perfect. So hold on one second. I'm going to stop the recording. You guys, be on the lookout. This video is coming out between tonight and tomorrow morning.